Dear students, in this video, we are going to learn about pairs of angles. Consider the angle here, angle KHM. H is the vertex of this angle and HM, HK are the arms of this angle. The measure of this angle is 33 degrees. You can observe, children. The two arms, initial ray, initial position, and the terminal position is green in color. These are the two arms of this angle. Right? Now, when we say pair, we have to consider one more angle. Look here. We got one more angle over here. You can observe. The measure of this angle is 57 degrees. You can see here. Now, the initial position is green in color. You can observe this. The terminal position of the first angle is the initial position of the second angle. You can observe it. The angle NHK and its measure is 57 degrees. The vertex is H common to the first angle and the arms are HK and the ray HN. Observe, children, these two angles have the vertex as common. They have the common vertex H. And what else is common? Yes, very good. One of the arm is common. You can observe the ray HK is common to our first angle whose measure is 33 degrees and also to the next angle, second angle whose measure is 57 degrees. So for these two angles, we have got a vertex, common vertex and a common arm. Such angles that have common vertex and a common arm are called as adjacent angles. Now, children, let us consider one more pair. Observe, you have an angle over here. The measure of it is 33 degrees. One more angle, you can just observe, you have one more angle here and the measure of this angle is 57 degrees. Now observe, children, this also forms a pair. You have two angles here. But do you see anything common? Do they have a common vertex? No. Do they have a common ray? No. These two angles do not have anything in common. Such angles that forms a pair but nothing is common to them are called as non-adjacent angles. It's a pair, you have two angles, but these two angles do not have anything in common. Such angles are said to be non-adjacent angles. Right. Now, let us observe the sum of these two angles in both the cases. In both the cases, in adjacent angles, the sum of the angles is 33 and 57. The other angle is 57. When we add them, we got the total to be 90 degrees. In this case also, in non-adjacent angles, in this pair, the sum is 33 and 57 happens to be 90 degrees. Now let us observe. Just try to change the values and see what's happening, children. The first angle, if the first angle is 58 degrees or 62 degrees, the second angle is 28 and the sum is 90 again. Even here for non-adjacent angles, 62 plus 28 is 90 degrees. You observe, let us change. I'm just changing the values. You just try to see the sum. What is the sum of these two angles? In both the cases, in adjacent angles as well as non-adjacent angles. when the angles, the common arm is moving, you can see the change in the measure of the angles in adjacent angles. Here in non-adjacent angles also, when the measure of the angles is being changed, just observe the sum of the angles in both the cases, adjacent angles and non-adjacent angles. Here the total happens to be 90 degrees. Such angles are called as complementary angles. A pair of angles, either adjacent or non-adjacent, if the sum of those two angles, the sum of the measure of those two angles is 90 degrees, then we call those angles as complementary angles. Now let us see another pair. This is one angle. This is another angle. Again, it has got a common vertex and a common arm. So these are adjacent angles as we discussed. And the angles that do not have anything in common, either the vertex or the arm, then they are called as non-adjacent angles. Now observe children, what is the sum of these two angles, a pair of angles in both the cases, adjacent angles and non-adjacent angles? 100 plus 80, 180. Even here 100 plus 80, 180. So let us change the values and see what's happening to the total. Yes, same thing as we have observed earlier. The pair, the total, the sum of the measure of these, the pair of angles happens to be 180 degrees here in this case. So such angles, the sum of the measure of two angles is 180, then they are called as supplementary angles. Now let us see one more. Observe the two angles here. First angle is 180 degrees, you can observe, and one more angle which has a common vertex to it and the common arm. This happens to be 174. These are adjacent angles, and look at the other pair that has nothing in common, and you know very well these are non-adjacent angles. Now let us try to see the sum of these pairs of angles. What is happening? What is the sum of these angles? Yes, you can observe the sum of the angles is, yes, very good. The sum of the angles is 360 degrees. So whenever we are changing, we are noticing that the sum happens to be 360 degrees in both the cases, in adjacent angles and also non-adjacent angles. These angles, these pairs of angles are called as conjugate angles. If the sum of the measure of the pair of angles is 360 degrees, then we call the angles as conjugate angles. That's all for today, children.